Hello, and thank you for joining A Shark's Perspective. So, if you need any kind of motivation to do more today, or even in your life in general, then this is a show for you. Today's guest has beaten ridiculous odds. I was lucky enough to become friends with him a couple of years ago after hearing him deliver a keynote at a small marketing conference talking about his own incredible story. Sean Swarner is a motivational speaker, author, performance coach, world record holder, a two-time terminal cancer survivor, the story of a documentary on Amazon, True North, and the only person in history to climb the highest mountain on every continent, trek to the South and North Poles, and complete the Hawaii Ironman all with one lung. And he's a subject matter expert at being positive despite the odds. And on this episode, we'll discuss turning something negative into something positive. When sharing your own story is important to help others, building a personal brand, frostbite, polar bears, and quite simply, pushing yourself to never give up. So let's tune into a real survivor with a humbled shark on this episode of A Shark's Perspective. Sean, thank you so much for joining us today on A Shark's Perspective. So tell us a little bit about your background and your career to date and what you're doing.
Well, my background, my career, it's probably different than anybody else I've ever met. Um, I am a keynote motivational speaker, climber, adventurer, author, and I also run a nonprofit for people touched by cancer. And that all started, wow, years ago when I was diagnosed as an eighth grader. I was 13 years old,
Yeah.
diagnosed with my first cancer, Hodgkin's lymphoma. And I remember the doctor coming into the hospital room and pulling my mom and dad out in the hallway and kind of discussing what was going on with their firstborn son. And at the time, I didn't really understand what cancer was. I was 13 years old. I didn't
Yeah.
really understand what was fully going on. But the doctor told him it was Hodgkin's lymphoma, and I didn't find this out until later. But they actually told my parents, your son has 3 months to live. So, I'm 13 on the cusp of my teen years and on
Right.
the cusp of my life,
Yeah.
and now I have an expiration date.
And the key point being that you said earlier that was your first cancer.
Yeah, I guess I'm a little bit of an overachiever.
Overachiever, absolutely.
So I was in remission for a year. I went through, about a year and a half of chemotherapy. I lost all the hair in my body, lost my friends, lost everything. But um, I was in remission for a year, and going in for a checkup for the first cancers, they found a second cancer, a completely unrelated primary cancer. And this time around, the chances of me surviving both of these cancers is essentially equivalent to winning the lottery 4 times in a row with the same numbers. So I mean, the chances of me surviving were pretty much zilch, and
Yeah.
kind of tongue in cheek. I play the lottery too when it's up to like $500 million, and
Sure.
I get like zero numbers. So I think I won the life lotto, but
We should go in
this time
together.
around, yeah, no, right. No, this time around, I was given 14 days to live. I was read my last rites. I was in a coma for roughly a year of my life, and to be honest with you, I don't even really remember being 16 years old.
Yeah. Yeah, that was something I saw. And we'll talk a little bit about later, but just the fact that you lost that part of your childhood that you don't remember. So, I had the pleasure of hearing you and meeting you and hearing you speak at a small marketing conference a couple of years ago, and we talked way back when because I was obviously just amazed and intrigued by your story. But really, I think the thing that was also interesting is if you would tell us a little bit about your background as an explorer and as as a mountain climber and the Explorer Grand Slam and what you've done that's a record that nobody else has achieved.
you know, Ever since I was 13, going through the first cancer, um, there was a moment when I was on the bottom, literally on my hands and knees on the shower floor, pulling chunks of hair to the drain so the water could go down,
Yeah,
and I was
same as
crying
every other
my
kid.
eyeballs out.
Yeah,
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, all my friends were worried about being popular, about
yeah,
what would the nicest shoes to wear, and the nicest hairstyles, the coolest clothes, whatever. At 13, I decided that I had to follow my own core values. I had to follow my own path in life, and that's eventually what I ended up doing. alluding to the mountains, where I wanted to give back hope because I was thinking about all the issues that I went through and all the hardships and the tears and like 36 hours worth of vomiting nonstop. It took a toll on me, but I knew that I had a new lease in life and I wanted to step up into a new and embrace my new normal. But also, I knew that I had given a body. I'd been given a body that could handle a lot of things. But also because of everything I went through, I knew my mind was in peak condition as well. So in 2002, I actually became the first cancer survivor to climb the highest mountain in the world, Mount Everest. And in the same breath, I'll say not only did I climb Everest and become the first cancer survivor to do that, I also became the first person with one lung to climb Mount Everest. It's a difficult enough endeavor to do it with your full lung capacity. I did it with half my lung capacity. And then after climbing Everest, I decided, all right, well, I want to reach around the world and inspire other people touched by cancer, which it almost seems like it's a global epidemic
Yeah.
anymore, and everybody knows someone touched by cancer. So I wanted to do something called the Seven Summits, which is the highest mountain on every continent. And I climbed the highest mountain on every continent, completed the seven summits, and I guess just for good measure, I also did the Hawaii Ironman triathlon, which is the world's championship Ironman distance triathlon based in Hawaii, and it's a roughly a 2.5 mile ocean swim, a 112-mile bike ride, and you finish with a marathon. So I enjoy pushing myself. And then after that, I wanted to continue doing something more. And there's something called the Explorers Grand Slam, which, I personally think it sounds like a Denny's breakfast platter, but
Yeah.
I didn't name it. It's the seven summits, like I said, the highest mountain on every continent. And then you ski to the South and North Poles. So I became the first cancer survivor to do that. If you add in the Hawaii Ironman, there's only one person in history who's ever accomplished all that. And he's had two cancers. He was given 3 months to live, 14 days to live, and he only has one functioning lung, which is just proof that you can do anything you put your mind to.
Yeah, this whole conversation is making me feel so incredibly guilty for what I didn't accomplish yesterday, or every other day. I try to set the bar pretty high with the quality and level of guests that come to the show, but you're pretty much blasting past all of that. So it's an amazing. So, and for those that want to know more, I mean, Sean, you're one of the few guests, if only the only guest that I've ever had on the show who's had a documentary made about their lives. And for those that don't know, True North, the Sean Swarner story, is on Amazon Prime. Sean, with that show, with the movie, how did that all come to fruition? How did you, plan that out to help get your story before? Who approached you? Did you approach them? How did all this happen?
Yeah, that's actually a really interesting story. I have a good friend who works in New York City named John Lippers, and he and I have been friends for a long time. And he runs a marketing company out there. You guys should connect sometime because he's an amazing guy. And he knew a guy who worked at a company called The Workshop. His name was Tom Farrell. He eventually connected the two of us, and Tom and I just connected instantly. Tom was like, this guy has such an amazing story, we need to tell it. We just need to figure out a platform. So all of a sudden he hears that I'm looking at doing the Explorers Grand Slam. I've done the seven summits, I've done the South Pole, and I only had the North Pole to go. So he comes on board and he's like, all right, well, let's do this. So they actually hired two videographers to go up to the North Pole with me on this 10-day expedition, battling 80 below temperatures. And somehow the workshop made 80 below look somewhat tolerable. I don't know how they did it, but they made the film look beautiful. Um, and then after that, they went and it was on PBS for a year, and then Amazon was super interested, and then the workshop and Tom and the other Tommy and Todd, all those guys came together and decided, all right, well let's give it to Amazon. So now anybody can watch it, which is fantastic because anybody who's touched by cancer, anybody who needs a little hope. I mean, you said you watched it on a plane the other
Yeah,
day,
yeah,
and it was just amazingly well done, and they really did do a beautiful job, and the footage is unreal. But one thing that always, when we whenever we do some viewings or showings or screenings or whatever they call it, I think they're called screenings. We'll get up on stage and people ask questions and they'll say, oh, what you've done is great. It's amazing that you made it up there. And I'm like, yeah, but you know what? look at the people that you don't see behind the scenes.
Right.
Those are the people, like the guys who are doing the videography. A
Yeah.
guy named Corbin and a guy named Igor. They're not only going to the North Pole, but they're going to the North Pole and filming it.
Oh, absolutely. No, I've done shark diving a lot, and I've taken a GoPro on occasion. But I love watching Shark Week, and the guys that always amaze me are the guys that have to stand out there filming the guy who's
Yeah.
looking all the way around for the sharks, and you got a cameraman who's he's a little bit on his own. Talk about
Yeah, all
paid.
that behind the scenes stuff, you don't see that. You need a cameraman on the cameraman.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I thought they also did an amazing job with interviewing your parents and your mom, especially talking about what happens with your child when they get cancer. I mean, that's the part that'll get you to tear up. Anybody, especially anybody that's got kids or sees anybody go through something like that. But yeah, I'm sure your mom enjoyed a little bit of the post celebrity, but that also is a painful journey for her to go back and remember as well. I'm certain.
Oh, for sure. And cancer is not an individual disease. And I've seen the film a few times, and I've known my mom for 40 some odd years of my
Yeah,
life, and
yeah,
I watch it and I still get teary eyed. I'm like, Mom, come on, cut it out.
exactly, exactly.
No, it is amazing though that my mom, she still makes me teary eyed.
100%. Yeah, so one of the things I think you could have done though to improve the documentary, I'm not gonna lie, but if you'd added some car chases, or
Some
maybe
car chases.
use some CGI to add some sort of zombie polar bear, that would have been great. But
Right.
I know you've talked to some folks about doing a movie, but who do you want to see play you in the movie? And you can't say Brad Pitt because that's the obvious choice everybody goes to. George Clooney.
I think at this stage, I would love, just because I love him as an actor. I think is amazing. Um, and the fact that he gives back because his father passed away from cancer. Bradley Cooper would
Yeah,
be amazing playing me in the movie. But as long as I could have some sort of cameo where I'm like his climbing partner, or I save his life somewhere, or I'm his brother, or whatever it might be, I
yeah.
think I think it'd be awesome.
Maybe he can get you to sing with Lady Gaga too at
There
the
you go.
Grammys. So you said something in there, and I've heard you say this a couple of years ago when I heard you first speak. I heard you say it in the movie, but I think it's always important that you said you didn't want to let cancer define you. What did you mean by that? And kind of elaborate, if you will, on that point.
Oh, sure. It's like anything in life. Anybody who goes through something traumatic, you can have two choices. You can let it define who you are and rule your life, or you can look at the positive aspects of it. And so I was in grad school, and I inherently kind of looked back at my life, and because when I was in college, I turned into Belushi from Animal House. I had a great time. I didn't
Sure.
open a book, and I mean it's incredibly difficult to pass organic chemistry or in immunology without studying. So I eventually ended up taking the GREs and scored pretty high because I studied and I was in tune with my core values, and I knew what I wanted to do and the path of my life. And as I was going through grad school, I looked back at my life and thought to myself, this whole cancer thing, it kind of messed me up for a while.
Yeah.
But I also have the choice in how I want to see it. And I could look at it as something negative or something positive. And I'll be honest with you, it's one of the worst things that's ever happened to me. But in that same breath, it's one of the best things that's ever happened to me. So I had a choice on how I wanted to see it. And I wanted to turn something negative into something positive. And I wanted to use that to help other people. So I had this idea and this notion of reaching out to the world and sharing my story with others to help them believe in themselves. So I definitely didn't want the cancer to define who I was. I wanted to define what the cancer meant to me. Because as soon as you give away your power to something or someone else, you're powerless.
Yeah.
It's just like going through life, and say you get into an argument and someone says, you see how you're making me feel, you see what you're doing to me. No, that's a load of bull. You know what? Basically what you're doing is you're giving that power to somebody else over your own emotions. And the instant you lose those, you relinquish the power of your own self to someone else, and you're out of control. So it all depends on how you react in certain situations. And the greatest thing is you have a choice in every situation you put yourself in.
So you did that though, and I think it's amazing. Why did you decide to go after, climbing these seven summits and going to the, coldest places in the world and the most difficult terrain in the world? Why, what was it about mountain climbing that said I got to go climb that mountain?
I think it was two things. One, after doing some research, I wanted to keep going bigger and bigger and bigger, and
Sure.
literally find the highest platform in the world to scream hope. To give something back to people touched by cancer. Another idea is, maybe I'm trying to show people that after going through cancer, life's not that bad and anything's tolerable. You can do anything. And it's kind of like looking back at it. When I'm on the mountain, um, I can always pick up the satellite phone and call somebody and say, "Man, get me the hell out of here."
Yeah. Yeah.
Avalanches, I'm surrounded by avalanches, fly a helicopter and come get me. But people who are going through cancer, they can't pick up the phone and say, I'll come back next year.
Yeah.
They just don't have that option. So I actually get my inspiration, my hope from people battling and going through the rough times in their lives. Because if they can continue doing what they're doing, I can continue battling the elements. So I think it's kind of a metaphor for life, where I've been at the lowest point in my life when I was on that shower floor crying my eyeballs out, basically going bald while I was taking a shower because of the chemo. But then now look at what I'm doing. I'm proving that, I'm still alive. I'm proving that, life could potentially begin after cancer. It
Yeah.
all depends on your perspective.
Well, and to your point, that's what we've talked offline about this, but it's one of the reasons why I also, have such a passion and for supporting St. Jude Hospital. It's really one of the greatest children's hospitals in the world, and when you look at that environment where people could be surrounded, where they are surrounded by sadness all the time, the hospital, for example, is really done a great job to support as much as they can with. I'm trying to think of the way to say this. Not things to make you happy, but ways to help uplift as best they can, and that's that mental piece is such an important part of it. So you talk about developing your own daily pattern and things like that to help set your goals higher than they were possible, but how did you sort of start developing your own daily pattern for coming out of that?
That's a great question, and I'm working on a program for cancer survivors
Yeah.
now, called the Next 7 Days. Where I want to help people reprogram their brains and focus on the positives. And I think it happened when I was back again on the shower floor when I had two choices and I could either fight for my life or give up and die. Those were literally my choices. I could give up and leave this world, or I can continue fighting and put together a tremendous life for myself. But I knew that it was a choice and I had to make a conscious decision based around my value system. And this is what I did when I was 13 years old. I wanted to do what was best for me in that moment because I had
Yeah.
to take care of myself. I mean,
Yeah.
there were nights I went to bed honestly not knowing if I was going to wake up the next morning. Talk about
Sure.
terrifying. I would be crying myself to sleep because I was petrified I was going to die in my sleep. So I'm sitting here, thinking of all the things that I've been through and all the things that I'm going through, and I was thinking, okay, well, what do I want? How can I be happy? What can I focus on? And if I focused on the negative stuff, it would eat me up inside. The cancer would spread and I would probably be dead.
Yeah.
But if I focused on the positive aspects of it and wake up every morning and think of all the things I'm grateful for and go to bed at night and think of all the things I'm grateful for, I programmed my brain day after day after day to focus on the positives, the constructive side of life, as opposed to the negative and destructive side of life. And I mean, a perfect example, you turn on the news when you wake up in the morning. What's on the news? 90 to 95% of what? Rape, murder, drugs, tsunamis here, people dying here. It's negative. You're starting your day off on a negative note. So when I was going through my cancers, I woke up and I visualized how I wanted my day to go. And I started living as though my future goals were in the present. So I started going off those positive emotions. And I realized, hey, you know what? I can really choose within the first 15 minutes of my life how I want my day to go. by consciously choosing where I want to focus my energy.
Such a great point. When you were up, on the different mountains, I know some of the times you were, I saw some of the interviews you did, you keep talking about if you sweat, you die. And, talking about if you get hot and perspire, then, that cold could, maybe you could elaborate a little bit better on it than I can, obviously, but kind of describe what you meant by if you sweat, you die.
Well, that's exact. I mean, that's you couldn't get any more poignant than that. And the reason is because it's 80 below. It's so cold on these mountains, and going to the North Pole. If you're moving fast enough, or if you're moving too fast, you start to develop heat in your body. Your body starts to produce heat. And what happens then is you sweat to cool yourself down. If you push yourself a little bit too much, too far, too fast, you start to sweat. And because it's so cold, the instant you stop, if your shirt is sweaty or if anything on you is sweaty, it will freeze. So you could literally have the sweat freeze to your body. You could have a shirt that's covered in moisture literally freeze and then you would die. That's how cold it is up there.
What were the coldest temperatures that you reached? You said 80 below?
80, 80 below zero.
It's
And
80
and, and
degrees where I am today. So 160-degree temperature difference.
wow. Yeah, I came back from the North Pole where it was 80 below, and with the wind chill, obviously a lot colder. But I was giving a presentation in a speech in Vegas, and I called my fiance at the time. I actually proposed to her from the North Pole via satellite phone, and I was there and I looked at her and looked at the temperature and then told her, look, babe, it's a 200 plus degree temperature difference from where I am now to where I was a few weeks ago. 200-degree difference.
Wow. In the documentary, you said when you were out there, you were reflecting and pondering on life's deepest questions. I'm kind of curious when you're out in the middle of nowhere and it's 80 below, what were the types of questions that you really started to ponder?
Why the hell am I here?
Exactly. Yeah. Where's the bathroom?
Yeah, exactly. No, it's funny because when you do have time to spend, actually, get another question that I honestly told myself was, oh my God, is that a polar bear?
Yeah.
Because we're walking in a straight line, single file. And when we radioed back to a base camp, which is run by the Russians, hundreds of miles away, they told us that they spotted via helicopter a couple polar bears on our path. So if you're the last person in line, last person that single file line skiing north, your head is in a constant swivel. Constantly looking right, constantly looking back, constantly looking left, constantly looking everywhere, and then your mind starts playing tricks on you because you see these chunks of ice everywhere.
Yeah.
And you start thinking to yourself, "Oh my God, did that just move?"
Yeah.
Because you're thinking to yourself, a polar bear is going to sneak up behind you and have you for a meal.
Well, you were probably worried too. Did you drop and leave like a wrapper for a granola bar that a polar bear is going to sniff? So,
Exactly. So that was definitely one, and then another one, is constantly asking yourself, first of all, telling yourself this is so awesome, this is fantastic, and then literally 30 seconds later, thinking to yourself, my God, this sucks. It's so cold. This is horrible. But you just can't. I constantly kept going through that cycle in my brain of positive, negative, positive, negative, positive, negative, asking myself, what the hell am I doing here? This
yeah.
is awful. It's so cold. I can't feel any appendage at all. But it's definitely worth it, and I kept focusing on accomplishing that goal.
So, a question you must ask yourself then, and I'm sure you've asked it many times, whether it was out there in the frozen tundra or just day to day, but do you think about the possibility often or rarely with cancer potentially coming back?
I rarely think about it, just because
Good for you.
I really believe you get what you focus on. And if I was focused on the cancer not coming back, don't come back, it's gonna come back. And it's just like walking down the street and you telling yourself, don't trip, you're gonna fall on your face.
Yeah.
I'm focused on living a happy, wonderful, beautiful life. And if you turn around and say, stand tall, walk strong, it's the same concept, but you're focusing on something positive as opposed to the avoidance of something negative. So I really don't think about it that much. I do, once a year get my annual checkup, blood
Sure.
work and everything. And it festers a little bit, I'll be honest. But at the end of the day, there's still nothing I can do about it except for live every moment that I have to the
Exactly.
fullest that I can.
Well, and then you start turning it towards other things, family, friends that you worry about more, or whether or not you're going to get
Yeah.
hit by a lightning bolt or a coconut. So, well, so you met a lot of people when filming the documentary as well, and I, saw where Vern Yip from Trading Spaces got involved. That must have been pretty cool to meet somebody who's, well respected in his field. But how did he get involved? I think he lost his mother.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. Unfortunately, he lost his mom to cancer, and she put up a valiant effort, a valiant fight. And when Vern and I got together, it was pretty emotional,
I can imagine.
just because me being a survivor and his mom passing away, and uh,
Well, and you
he's been
guys are
through a lot.
he's made a pretty significant living, being on a hit TV show for years. But you cut through all the BS and phony conversations once you start talking about cancer. I mean, I'm sure that was just a massive connection because what you were discussing and putting together was the flag with all the names. Describe that. I thought that was just an amazing thing that you did, and I could tell from the video how responsible you felt for getting there to the top with that flag.
Exactly. And once you start talking about cancer, once you start talking about um, issues, problems, anything that it becomes an obstacle, you instantly remove those barriers of status. You instantly remove those barriers of fame, and people just become people. And Vern at his core is an amazing person, and that's why he came on to help with the flag. And the flag actually began on my first climb up Mount Everest. It was my mom's idea to collect names of people who've been touched by cancer. It was a fundraiser for a cancer charity called the Cancer Climber Association. And I took a flag to the top of the world that had hundreds of names of people touched by cancer, and at the bottom of the flag, it's dedicated to all those affected by cancer in this small world. Keep climbing.
Yeah.
Did it on Everest. Did it on every single mountaintop since then. The highest point on every continent, Seven Summits, the South Pole, Hawaii Ironman. And then for the North Pole, Vern came on board with the workshop in the production company to help get it a little bit bigger. And by a little bit bigger, I mean when I got to the North Pole, I had a flag that was probably 7 feet by 4 feet wide, and it was full of thousands and thousands of names of people touched by cancer. And Vern helped design the flag. It was 5 different colors, which goes back to looking at the 5 different colors of the prayer flags that they fly at Everest Base Camp, and the red, green, blue, yellow, and it represents the 5 different elements of the universe, but also things like hope, inspiration. And in the middle of the flag, it actually spelled out the word hope, because I was saying that the human body can live for roughly 30 days without food. The human condition can sustain itself for roughly 3 days without water, but no human alive can live for more than 30 seconds without hope.
Yeah.
Because as soon as you lose hope, you have nothing left. So you have to maintain that hope and perseverance. So when I got to the North Pole, I unfurled this flag that had thousands of people touched by cancer that was literally covering all 4 corners of the globe. It was truly an emotional moment.
Other celebrities and people that you've heard from out in the world that have seen your story, who are the kind of folks that have reached out to you?
I've met a handful of people from. Wow. Well, we just heard Vern. Jerry Mathers, if that name rings a
Yeah,
bell.
yeah.
I remember
Leave it
I
to
met
Beaver.
that guy. Exactly. Yeah, he looks just like the Beeve, except older. Um, Debbie Gibson, I met her as well. Joey Pantaleone. So it's
Yeah.
pretty much all over the place, because everybody has an issue. Everybody has something they're going through. And if you remove that whole fame and you remove that celebrity status, like I said, we're all the same people at the core level.
Sure.
We're all motivated by different things. It doesn't mean that any one person's better than the other. So there's no judgment on my part whatsoever. You just be who you want to be, and be happy doing it.
Agreed. So, then let's kind of transition a little bit and talk a little bit about marketing, if you will. I don't want to dive too deeply into that, but you are building out a personal brand with your story. It's an amazing story. It's an amazing cause that you're doing, helping tell the story to fight cancer. And but what are the things that you're sort of doing and leveraging today to help build out your own brand?
I'm at the point now where I can't handle everything on my own. And for the past, 10 years, I've done the PR myself, the marketing myself. I've done most of the things by myself. And now that I have a film, I have a published book. I've written three other books. I'm talking to a production company in Hollywood. I want to get my story out there to help others.
Yeah.
And the way I'm doing that is, I'm looking for someone to help with it, but social media is huge, and I want to put together these bite-sized chunks of data where people can actually ingest those and use them for their own inspiration.
I saw you speak at a marketing conference. Why do you think you're pulled into whether it's a marketing conference or a sales conference? I mean, what is the story that corporations and brands and agencies and consulting firms really love for you to tell? And what can we? I mean, this is such a rhetorical, silly question, but what can we learn from listening and learning to you?
Well, I think it's a number of different things because being a keynote speaker, sometimes they just want that warm fuzzy feeling. So then I go in, I just tell my story, and I leave them with you know a closing keynote speech or a closing a few sentences to make them have that warm fuzzy inside
Yeah.
mushy gushy type emotional feeling, which is fine. Other times, people want me to go in there and motivate their employees. One time I gave a presentation for Guinness, and it was kind of funny. So I got up on stage and told everything I've been through, and then all of a sudden the CEO comes up and says, "All right, you've heard that what this guy's done. Here are projected sales for next year. Don't tell me you can't do it."
Right.
That was kind of funny, and he was kind of tongue in cheek doing it. So that was fun. But I think people can learn from me how to do what I've done and how to tap into that intrinsic value system, because there are so many people who are living their lives by other people's values, other people's goals, other people's accomplishments. What do you want? How can you be happy? Because who you are in one situation is pretty much who you are in every situation. And people, I don't think, take time enough to step back from their lives and consciously make decisions based on their values. Some people, and here's a good thing that I always wonder. I don't understand why so many people in the world are more concerned about what others think of them than what they think of themselves.
Yeah.
I do not get that. And if you don't program your brain, it'll be programmed for you. Through the media, through the news, through other people, through your boss, whoever it might be. You need to program your brain and focus on your core values to help you be happy yourself. And once you're happy, everything will come. I actually have a core values assessment tool where people can begin to understand themselves on a level you never knew possible. And once you start directing your life on a path that you want to go for yourself, not others, you can truly be happy.
Absolutely. So, Sean, I know you've got a 501c3, cancerclimber.org, a recognized charity, cancerclimber.org. Tell us a little bit about that charity and what the goal is and what you're trying to do.
Well, initially, when my brother and I founded it back in, I want to say, 2001, we wanted to fund cancer research, but there are so many people who are doing that, which is awesome and fantastic. But we wanted to start giving back and making a difference now. So what we do is we give a grant to cancer survivors to go climb Kilimanjaro every year. And the person who's going up this year is in charge of the fundraiser for next year. And eventually we want to branch out into going up Everest. But our ultimate goal is to raise $1.5 million to have a mobile camp for young adults with cancer. So that way it travels around the country. And as opposed to survivors or patients trying to make their way to the camps, because there's so many camps around the country right now for people touched by cancer, and because of the compromised immune systems, oftentimes they can't hop in a plane and travel to the destination. Because they might die of a common cold. So we came up with this great idea. Well, if you can't take the kids to the camp, take the camp to the kids.
Yeah, great idea. So, Sean, what is next for you? You're obviously way too young to stop. I don't know if you're going to dive inside a volcano or, you know, jump inside, the great white whale and then come out later somehow. But what's next for you?
Immediately every year I take a group up Kilimanjaro,
Yeah.
and we call it the Ultimate Africa Adventure, and it's a fundraiser for a cancer charity. So, the Cancer Climber Association, what we do is we pay for a cancer survivor's trip every year to go up Kilimanjaro and then on a safari. So whatever we raise this year, we'll go to either one, two, three, depending on how much we raise. We'll go to a cancer survivor next year. So we pay it forward, and the survivor who goes this year is responsible for that fundraiser, and the survivors who go next year are responsible for those fundraisers, the year after. So immediately, and anybody can go. Just throwing it out there, and we still have space. It's the end of July and early August. It's a 6-day hike up Kilimanjaro. Nothing technical. If you're in shape, you can do it, and push yourself if you're a little scared. And then we celebrate with a 5-day safari. And then I'm also working on a cancer survivorship program called the Next 7 Days. And then after that, believe it or not, I am on the next big adventure, looking at going to run 7 marathons on 7 continents in 7 days.
Wow. Are you really?
I really am.
Sean, I know you live in Colorado where there are not a lot of sharks, and you didn't see any, I'm sure, on your 7 summits, but what is your favorite kind of shark and why? And obviously, I'm asking you that because you're on a shark's perspective.
Wow, that's a great question. Instantly, the great white pops up because he's so powerful, but I also like the hammerhead just because he's so interesting.
Sean, it is that special time in the show. Are you ready for the 5 most interesting and important questions that you're going to be asked today?
I'm kind of scared, but let's do it.
Good. You should be. So, number 1, the movie Everest, starring Jason Clarke, Josh Brolin, and Jake Gyllenhaal, or Ernest Hemingway's 1952 Snows of Kilimanjaro, which was turned into a movie in 1952, starring Gregory Peck and Susan Hayward.
The book, definitely.
Agreed. Number 2, the black bears in Colorado or polar bears of the Arctic.
Oh, well, since I was running away from since I was running away from the polar bears and slept in a tent one night with a rifle, I'm going to say the bears in Colorado.
Number 3, Pop-Tarts or toaster strudel?
Ooh, depends on the flavor and how much icing I get, because I try to stay away from sugar, but when I get it, I'm like a crack fiend. I'm like, gimme, gimme, gimme. So, so if I could do the toaster strudel with 2 of those packets, toaster strudel.
Fair enough. All right, number 4, the Explorers Grand Slam, or as you referred to it earlier, Denny's Grand Slam.
Explorers Grand Slam, hands down.
Yeah, it's not much of a choice. And the most important question you're going to be asked today is biscuits or cornbread?
Biscuits.
You thought that there's your deep question to ask yourself when you're out in the Arctic is biscuits or cornbread. So the longer you go without, the more you might actually think about it.
No, it's funny because when you're out there, you start, because after days and days and days of eating freeze-dried food, you start thinking about food that you miss from home. That's a great question to start thinking about and pondering.
Yeah. So, Sean, where can people find out more about you, watch the documentary, follow your cause on social channels, and more?
Yeah, this is such an easier question than biscuits are great, or biscuits or cornbread.
Agreed.
That's easy. It's SeanSwarner.com. Sean like Sean Connery, and then Warner Brothers with the S in the front of it. So SeanSwarner.com.
And you got to watch True North, guys. So thank you so much, Sean, for being with us today on A Shark's Perspective.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
So there was my conversation with Sean Swarner, a motivational speaker, author, performance coach, world record holder, 2-time terminal cancer survivor, the story of a documentary on Amazon, True North, and the only person in history to climb the highest mountain on every continent, trek to the South and North Poles, and complete the Hawaii Ironman, all with one lung. And he's a subject matter expert at being positive despite the odds. Let's take a look at 3 key takeaways from my conversation with him. First, I love when he said that, and I'll paraphrase a bit, so many people are living their lives by other people's values, goals, and accomplishments. What do you want? How can you be happy? People, I don't think, take time enough to step back from their lives and consciously make decisions based on their values. I agree, and I especially like and agree with this point. I don't understand why so many people in the world are more concerned about what others think of them than what they think of themselves. And if you don't program your brain, then it will be programmed for you. So true. Second, if you go to a conference, whether it's marketing, sales, whatever the subject, network and look for speakers with amazing stories like Sean's. Make a human connection and try to help them amplify their story if and when you realize that they have a great story. Watch True North on Amazon and go to cancerclimber.org to help support. Third, I love to give advice based on my own experience that forms a shark's perspective. But quite simply, I haven't been through Sean's experience with cancer, and I hope I never will. Very few of us have, but we do know someone who has been affected by cancer. We all do. So take into account Sean's view on taking advantage of the time that you have. Don't let cancer or any ailment define you. Easier said than done, but I hope his story inspired you. Got a question? Send me an email to kenneth@asharksperspective.com. It's been my privilege that you took the time to listen to this show. So keep climbing, go to the highest platform in the world, and scream hope. And join us on the next episode of A Shark's Perspective.